Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Live It Loud podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. In this podcast, we talk about all things faith, politics, marriage, motherhood. If you don't know me, welcome. My name is Maya. I am the host of the Live It Loud podcast. We're going to be getting into some very deep topics of conversations, some things that I'm very passionate about. But before we do that, I wanted to just introduce myself to you in case you don't know me. Hello, like I said, my name is Maya. I'm a mother. I've been married for almost 2 years. My son is he's just freshly 9 months old, which is very exciting. And I also am a pro-life advocate and content creator, and I talk about all sorts of things on my social medias. You can find me across platforms as Live It Loud Maya. In the last episode, if you watched or listened, we kind of talked about the why be pro-life. So talking about abortion and being pro-life is one of the main things that I talk about on my social media pages. So I wanted to get a little bit deeper into the why in this podcast, because obviously there's only so much you can talk about in a 30 to 90 second reel, right? It's important to get into the deeper conversations on why. Find your why for anything in life, right? Find your why for why you believe certain things. Find your why for, your job. All of those things are important. So when you're talking about something that is as important as an issue like abortion, it's important to know your why. So last episode, we went over 3 things to find our why on why we're pro-life. And in the first episode, we covered using your voice in a culture that tells you to be silent. And so I hope that those 2 episodes help empower you to speak up, to be unapologetically pro-life, and to also help you strengthen some of your beliefs and your views. And today's episode is going to be one of the last episodes I'm doing for a while on this topic of abortion. We're going to be breaking into some other topics I'm really passionate about. But this one specifically, we're going to be breaking down some of the top abortion arguments that I hear, some of the top questions. We're only going to go through 3 questions today just for the sake of time, but also to really dive deep into these pro-choice, pro-abortion arguments and dismantle them as pro-lifers. So first off, I want to say that over the last weekend, I had the privilege of attending the March for Life with Live Action Org, who I content create for, and I help them with their social medias. And I absolutely love doing that. I love being a pro-life advocate. I literally get to see lives saved and changed. So I got to be there with them at the March for Life. It was incredible. And really one thing I wanted to highlight about that March for Life was that there was over 100,000 people there. I know oftentimes in your walk, maybe in your faith or just in your beliefs, it can feel discouraging because you might feel alone. And so it's so nice going to different events like that because truly you realize how many people agree with you and truly how many people are on the side of truth. And it's so encouraging, and it really encouraged me to get back to make this episode to help empower you to be more pro-life. And so first off, I do want to say that all opinions in this video and in this podcast are going to be my own. So make sure you follow me, make sure you subscribe so I can keep making more episodes. So today we are going to be answering and addressing questions that no one wants to answer about abortion. We're going to be covering 3 of my most frequently asked pro-choice questions or most heard pro-choice arguments. And we're going to give you some solid ways to have open conversations and change minds about abortion. All opinions in this podcast are my own, like I just said. So let's get into answer these hard questions. I do want to give a quick disclaimer, like I do in most of the podcast episodes. For me, being pro-life and having conversations, being able to answer hard questions is so important, but having compassion and care for women and babies in tough situations is more important. There are literal lives at stake, and women who, are misinformed, who may regret their decision to have an abortion for the rest of their life. And so as much as it is important to be able to debate, what is more important is to be more winsome and to change minds and relate to other people. In order for us to abolish abortion, it's going to start with heart change, it's going to start with compassion, and it's going to start with truth. It is not going to start from winning an argument or trying to be right. So remember that these answers for these pro-choice questions are tools for you to help educate others and educate yourself, not tools to disregard the real concern that many people have surrounding abortion. So first, I want to say that these are tools for you. I just want you to remember to have compassion, to be understanding, because these are real people's lives. This is not just a conversation on the internet for debate. There are literal millions of babies that are killed every single year in America. This is a real issue. Okay. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer first. It is not about being right. It is not about winning an argument. It is about literal lives at stake. So let's get into this conversation. So like I said, last episode, we went into the 3 whys to why be pro-life. We went over the first why being every single human being has intrinsic value. That's why abortion is wrong. The second one being life begins at conception. So from the point forward, when we identify when a human life begins, that human being should have human rights. And the first right is the right to live. So that was point number 2. And the last one, number 3, is it's always wrong to kill an innocent human being. So every single answer that I'm going to give you in this episode, it's not going to be like some very crazy random answer. It is all based off of the 3 whys, why you be pro-life. When you view the world through a life-affirming view, it will become very easy to answer these kind of questions. When you see life as valuable and you filter the world through that kind of lens, you will be able to answer all of these questions based upon your why, based upon those fundamental reasons why that you are pro-life. So if you haven't watched that episode and you want to get a little framework for the pro-life position, whether you're pro-choice listening or watching, or whether you're pro-life and you're just trying to strengthen your beliefs, I encourage you to go back and listen or watch that episode because it's really good and we dive really deep into the why be pro-life, into those 3 things that I covered. So all of these answers are going to be based off of those 3 fundamental basic beliefs about being pro-life. These are going to be the most common pro-choice arguments that I hear when I'm posting online, as I'm a pro-life advocate, as I do debates and reacts. These are the top 3 pro-choice arguments or pro-choice questions that I hear. So we're going to dive deep into this first question. And this first one you're going to hear all the time. This is going to be the most common thing that you're going to hear. You've probably heard it a million times over, is the bodily autonomy argument. The my body, my choice. I can do what I want with my body. I don't have to carry through with a pregnancy because it's my body and this baby is violating my right to bodily autonomy. All right. So you're going to hear that very often. That is going to be probably the number 1 argument in favor of abortion. So let's dive deep into why this argument is wrong when it comes to defending abortion. So first of all, in order to kind of refute this point of bodily autonomy, we have to talk about what bodily autonomy is, or more so, how abortion supporters view bodily autonomy. So just off a simple Google search, I have this little definition here. This is, according to Google, bodily autonomy is defined as the right to make decisions about your own body, life, and future without coercion or violence. Bodily autonomy means you can't be forced to make someone dependent on your body. Like, let's give this example, like someone needs your kidney and you wouldn't be forced to give them your kidney because that belongs to you. That is a part of your body. So here's what most people misunderstand about bodily autonomy. They think that because a baby in the womb can't survive without their mother's body until like a certain point, that it's a violation of bodily autonomy. But in reality, pregnancy doesn't violate bodily autonomy. And I'm going to explain why. You might think I sound crazy, but I'll explain. First of all, a preborn child's dependency is not imposed by another person. Like, for example, someone asking to steal your kidney or trying to steal your kidney from you, right? It is not imposed by another person. It is a natural result of an action that creates a new human life. There is a moral difference between refusing to create dependency, like I said, someone wanting to borrow your kidney, and killing someone because they are dependent on you. These are 2 very different things that we need to make sure we take a mental note of. You cannot cause a person to exist in a state of dependence and then claim the right to kill them for that dependence, okay? Well, let's give an example. A true bodily autonomy violation would be like someone straps you to the bed and says, let me use your organs so I can sustain my life without your consent, right? That is a true bodily autonomy violation, is someone saying, you must let me use your organs to survive. You're being forced to sustain another person against your will. That is a bodily autonomy violation. Whereas when we look at natural dependency, something like pregnancy, right? Let's say you have a sick child in your home. This child lives with you. They live in your home, right? You offer to take care of them. You help take care of them because that's your responsibility as an adult as they recover from illness. They depend on you because of your choices and actions to help, not because they forced you to help them, right? You cannot just kill your child because you're annoyed and you don't want to take care of them anymore because they're sick and you're tired of it, right? Their dependency is a natural result of the situation. You can't just neglect that child or intentionally kill them just because you don't want to take care of them anymore. Sure, maybe you could get another adult to help you, but you still couldn't deliberately end their life just because you don't want them to be dependent on you to make them meals or to help support them or carry them to bed, whatever it is, right? They are fully dependent on you. That still does not give you the right to end their life. Now, this is not a perfect example, but it's just an example for comparison, which is real bodily autonomy violation versus something like pregnancy, which is its own real case in itself. Bodily autonomy, it does not include the right to intentionally end the life of another innocent human being. Let's make that very clear. A child in the womb, they have their own separate DNA. They are their own unique, distinct human being. Biologically, a child growing in the womb in your uterus isn't an intrusion because your uterus exists to sustain human life. Every one of us relied on it during our earliest stages of development. And our dependency on our parents, it doesn't erase humanity. It is a part of how all human life begins. Human beings are dependent on others in many cases. Pregnancy is not the only case where other human beings are dependent on others. Like, for example, newborns. Newborns are completely dependent on adults' body to survive. My son was born, and whether or not he, was dependent on me to survive, which I, nursed him, which means that he was fully dependent on me, but he was also dependent on my husband. And if, if we would have been in a situation where he needed to be adopted, right, somebody else would have had to use their body to take care of that human being, right? Same thing with the elderly, with people who are disabled. They are all dependent on other human beings to function and to exist. And that still doesn't give us the right to end their lives. Dependency does not make someone less human, right? Dependency should give us more of a desire to help someone because we know that they are in need of help. They are in need of help to survive. So someone's dependency shouldn't make us say, oh, you know what, they're not valuable, we should kill them. It should give us more of a desire to help them, especially in a civilized society. Pregnancy is not something that is forced on a woman and violates her bodily autonomy. It is a biological reality. Society regularly asks adults to protect dependent humans, especially when their lives are at stake, right? There are so many things that I'm limited by the government to do with my body. I am not allowed to use my bodily autonomy to harm another innocent person. People say, oh, we don't want the government controlling our bodies. The government controls your body often, right? If you break that law and if you do things with your body that are illegal, you're going to go to jail, right? So if we have a responsibility as adults to take care of our children after they're born, right, to take care of those who are more vulnerable and more dependent, then it follows that it should be the same. It should be the same before they're born. And that goes back to acknowledging the human life that is in the womb. We can't just kill them just because they're dependent. And it is a completely unique scenario. But it all boils down to this. It all boils down back to those fundamental points of it is always wrong to kill an innocent human being. And you cannot use your body to inflict harm or kill another innocent person just because you feel like it. So that is kind of a surface level answer to that question, but hopefully that will help empower you. If you want more resources, I'm going to link a few things down below. There are some great books that go over some of these pro-life apologetics, but I just want to empower you with some basic answers to help you defend your pro-life position if you ever need to, but also to give you a more, fundamental base for your pro-life beliefs as well. So that is kind of the answer to the my body, my choice, bodily autonomy. We're limited by what we can do with our body all the time. We're not allowed to use our body to harm other innocent human beings intentionally. So that's the answer to the first question. Let's get into the most common second question or second argument that I hear about abortion. And this one is so ridiculous to me, but it's worth it to highlight because I feel like this is one that is often preached by pro-choicers and by pro-aborts it's just a clump of cells argument. You're going to hear this often. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's just like it's a single cell zygote, right? It doesn't even matter. It's just a clump of cells, right? You're going to hear that oftentimes by pro-abortion people, by people who support abortion. And this one is just silly to me because everything is made up of cells. Cells are just the building blocks of life. Just because something is made up of cells doesn't mean that they're not human being. And I think what we need to address is it's not really as important, what it's made up of, but what it is, right? Is it a human life? Yes, sure, it is cells. We're all cells, but what kind of cells is it? Is it dog cells? Is it, wood cells? Is it a dolphin cells, right? No, it's not. It is human. It is a human life. And so I honestly think this argument is so silly because we know what science says. Science says that from conception, a child in the womb is a distinct living human with its own DNA, and every single innocent human being, every single individual human being deserves human rights, and no other human rights matter without the right to live first. You cannot have your bodily autonomy without your right to live first. So it's just silly to say that some people don't get human rights because of their stage in development when none of us would get any human rights unless we had the right to live first. So I think that's just ridiculous. From the point that someone is a human being, which according to science is at conception, like we said before, they have a right to live. An embryo is still a unique human being. They are just in a necessary stage of development that all human beings have to go through. We all have to go through this stage. Age should never make someone less valuable. At every stage, a child in the womb is still a complex human being, a human life that deserves protection. So although you could argue it's just a clump of cells, whatever, every single human being has to go through that stage of development, and they're still a complex human being. Like, I am the same human being now as I was when I was an embryo in my mother's womb. I am the same human being now that I will be the day that I die, and my value should never be determined by the stage of development that I'm in. And I think that's such a silly way to defend abortion, is to say it's just a clump of cells. Well, every single human being started out as a clump of cells. Aren't you so glad that you exist because your mom saw you as valuable and didn't just see, oh, you're an invaluable clump of cells, let me just kill you, right? If anything, we could use that argument for everything in life. Literally, we're all made up of cells. Just because I'm a ginormous clump of cells doesn't mean you have the right to kill me. I'm still a valuable human being with a right to live, and all innocent human beings have a right to live that should be protected. So that's that second one, and I think honestly it's kind of a silly one, but it's definitely important to address that. So we're going to get into the last one, the third most common pro-choice argument that I hear all the time, and we're going to talk about this one. Now, like I said, abortion is a very deep issue. These things that we're talking about is just to give you some apologetics, some ways to help strengthen your position. This is not to negate the things that women go through, because this is obviously a very real issue. If for, decades in America, we've been tussling over, the right to have an abortion versus a child's right to live. And so this is just to help empower you to be able to speak up. But again, I don't want you to use this in a way to just win an argument. It is more important to have civil conversations, to, really push the value of life in the womb and help women feel encouraged, because it's not about just the baby, right? It's not about, obviously we want to protect the baby, but it's also about educating the mother and letting her know that her child has value. And so again, I don't want these questions or these answers to turn into just like something that you can use in a debate to be right. I want you to use them in a way to change hearts and minds. So this last question is the most common one I feel like I hear all the time. The last third one is, women will die without abortion access. Like they're going to stick a coat hanger in there because they're so desperate to have an abortion. Women are going to die. What if a woman's life is at risk and then she can't get an abortion? And also we're going to address the, what about ectopic pregnancy? If we ban abortion, women with ectopic pregnancies are going to die. Women who have miscarriages are going to die. So let's dive deep into this one, because I feel like there's so much misinformation, especially surrounding this specific question, and let's refute all of that misinformation. So first, obviously, before we refute the difference between a miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, and an abortion, we have to know what each of them are. So I'm going to explain to you what each of them are. A lot of people say, oh, well, if I didn't have, if abortion was illegal, I wouldn't have been able to get my ectopic pregnancy removed. And that is just false. That is not true at all. First of all, most ectopic pregnancies aren't even done in the same way that an abortion is done. It's not even the same procedure, because what an ectopic pregnancy is when a fertilized egg, right, implants in the fallopian tubes or somewhere else where it's not supposed to be. It's usually, it's outside the uterus, but usually it's in the fallopian tubes. So in this specific scenario, it's like you're not getting, if you were to go in and get like an ordinary abortion procedure, it wouldn't even remove the baby, because the procedures are not designed to do that. In this specific situation, the embryo, it can't survive. This child in the womb can't survive, and this pregnancy can be life-threatening for the mother. Treating an ectopic pregnancy is about saving the mother's life. It is not about intentionally ending the child's life. The baby in the situation is not viable, and if the baby does grow, eventually get to the point where it will kill the mother and the baby will die as well, because it is just not a viable pregnancy. So ectopic pregnancy is completely different than abortion. And let's get into the next one, which is miscarriage. Let's explain what miscarriage is. So miscarriage, it is the natural loss of a pregnancy that occurs spontaneously, where a child's heartbeat stops, right? No one chooses this. It is a tragic natural event that happens, and the mother, it's not intentionally ending the life of the baby in the womb, right? So those things, obviously, we see here. An ectopic pregnancy is where a baby implants in the wrong area. A miscarriage is the spontaneous loss or ending of a heartbeat in the womb. So those are those two things. And then let's cover what an abortion is. Obviously, these things are very, very different, and that's why I want to explain them all to you, because you have to understand the difference before you make a claim on this. So abortion, in contrast, is the deliberate ending of a developing human life. The baby could survive in a normal pregnancy, but the procedure intentionally ends that life. The key difference in this is that ectopic pregnancies and miscarriages, the death of the child is not intentional. It is either medically necessary to save the child or save the mother, or it happens naturally. In abortion, the death is directly intended. Okay, directly intended. There's a big difference here in intent, right? A lot of people will say, oh, well, if abortion is murder, then miscarriage is manslaughter. It's not the same thing. That's like saying that your grandma having a heart attack and dying is the same thing as you stabbing your grandma to death. Obviously, those things are two completely different things, and intent has everything to do with it. So first, I'm going to say pro-life laws do not restrict life-saving care to a mother or a woman experiencing a miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy. If a medical care provider does not provide care to a woman in either of these cases, they should be held accountable for medical malpractice and should be educated on the laws. A lot of the times we hear stories of women who were denied care, and it was either like a misunderstanding. Like, for example, like someone went to I saw this story and the media was pushing it like insane about this husband and the wife who went to an urgent care and asked for an abortion, and they obviously told them no because they don't do abortions at urgent care, right? And then they went on the news and said, we were denied abortion care. And it's like, that was just a lie and misinformation, right? They were not denied abortion care. They just went somewhere that doesn't provide abortion care. And so I think oftentimes when we hear these kind of stories about women who were denied medical care, it's not actually that they were denied medical care, it's that the story is twisted or it's misinformation. So real, true pro-life laws do not prevent mothers from getting life-saving care. And so that's important to know about this, is that we oftentimes will see that and it's just not true. It's not the same thing as an abortion. You're not going to walk into a Planned Parenthood and be like, hey, I have an ectopic pregnancy, because they would turn you away. They say you need to go to the emergency room. Don't talk to us. You need to go to the emergency room. They're completely different things, and intent really does have everything to do with it. And so if a medical, provider does not treat a woman with an ectopic pregnancy or miscarriage, they need to be held accountable for medical malpractice, and they need to be educated on the law. Life-saving medical care for pregnant women is always necessary. And honestly, to say, the mortality rate for pregnant women in this country, it is horrific and it is horrible. And I think something we need to know is just, our country has so much further to go. I am in full support of, honestly, if we're going to spend our tax dollars, way more affordable healthcare, even free healthcare for pregnant women and support for pregnant women. And that's a whole different conversation for another day. But I do want to say that life-saving medical care, it's necessary, and it's different from an elective abortion, which is intentionally ending an innocent life. We really need to point this out, is that life-saving medical care for a baby that has already passed away is completely different than intentionally ending a child's life. Treating complications or tragedies like a baby that has already passed away is not the same thing. It's not the same thing. And I do want to give you guys some references, because you're going to say, who are you to say that, right? Why are you qualified? I'm not qualified, but I base these beliefs off of people who are qualified. So the Dublin Declaration was signed by over 1,000 doctors, and it states that abortion is never needed for medical reasons. There is a difference between treating an unsafe pregnancy and directly killing a baby. So according to many OBGYNs, and I'm going to give you a name, his name is Dr. Anthony Levatino, he's a gynecologist. He and many other gynecologists and OBGYNs say that early delivery is always a better alternative than abortion. Early delivery, removing the baby from a woman's body to hopefully save the baby, but also to save the life of the mother, is obviously better than intentionally, dismembering, starving, or poisoning, or sending your child into cardiac arrest. Obviously, doing your best effort to save both lives. And that's what this is all about, is it's really about valuing the life of the child, but also valuing the life of the mother, that they're both equally valuable human beings who deserve protection, who deserve care. And that's something that a lot of people misunderstand about the pro-life movement. It's like, oh, you just want to control women. And that's so far from the truth. That is so far from the truth, is that, no, we don't want to control women. We want to care about women, and help them know that abortion is not their only choice, but we also want to protect the lives of innocent babies who are murdered every single year for, many different reasons. But for most of the time, most women are not truly informed on abortion. They're not truly giving their informed consent, because our country and our world just spread so much misinformation about abortion. There is just so many things I could dive into this episode, but specifically I just wanted to answer those 3 questions. And again, these answers are very surface level. Abortion is a very deep and philosophical moral issue in our country and our world that's going on right now. And so it's very important to read up on your apologetics, to learn as much as you can, to listen, to learn, and to hear the voices of women, because if we're really going to bring our culture to change, we have to be able to change hearts and minds about this issue. And it starts with acknowledging the fact that every single human being in the womb is valuable, and every mother is valuable, and they both deserve care and protection. And so I hope that these answering these questions that most people avoid helped you today. I know that abortion it's hard to talk about, but an honest conversation is the first step towards, understanding, healing, and valuing every life. So let's keep asking the tough questions. Let's keep seeking truth and showing compassion about this, because every life matters. Every voice deserves to be heard. I'm grateful you chose to face these difficult topics with me today. Until next time, stay informed, stay courageous, and keep the conversation going. In my next episode, we're going to be branching into a different topic outside of abortion that still kind of relates, because all of this stuff kind of ties together. But I hope that you enjoyed these episodes. If you want to, go learn a little bit more about the why being pro-life and making a stronger belief as to why you be pro-life, go watch my previous episode. I'm excited. I do episodes bi-weekly, so make sure you subscribe, make sure you get this out there so that I can get, some interactions and keep this going. I love having conversations with you guys. I hope this was helpful and informative. And, I'm sorry if I kind of read off my notes a lot. I just want to make sure I stay on tune for everything and give you the best kind of information that I can provide. I'm going to link some resources down below. So if you're interested in learning more about the pro-life belief, or you're interested in making some more solid foundational beliefs about abortion, I will have some books down there. I'll have some websites, some resources for you. So I hope this was informative and helpful to you. I'm going to really stop rambling now because I can ramble so much. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the next one. Bye.